Wow, wow, wow. Hey everyone, welcome to another video on the channel. This one we're going to be going over another one of the Euros matches as part of our game day takeaway series. This time we have Germany and Portugal, and wow, wow, wow, wow. Wow. My goodness, what a match that was. A matchup of two of the best teams in the Euros, two teams in the group of death, and two teams that are really fighting to continue in this competition, and both really wanted to get a win today to help their chances of progressing. Even though three teams will progress from the group most likely, obviously you want to be one of those teams that are either winning the group or finishing second, so you have a guaranteed option, because it is not easy, as we saw earlier in the day with France only pulling out 1 point in a draw with Hungary. So it was a big match. It ended 4-2 to Germany, and I don't think anybody really expected, after their performance against France, that Germany was going to come out and play so well today. So let's dive into that here in just a moment. One of the first things that we picked out, I kind of gathered a list of 7 things that I thought would be kind of important to break down and go over as to why I think Germany won, or just kind of things that were themes throughout the game of why Portugal maybe weren't playing as well. So the first thing to pick out is Semedo, especially at that right back position, and kind of the rest of the two Portugal center backs, which were Ruben Dias and Pepe, playing on the left, and Dias on the right, were kind of really struggling in their communication for most of the match from what it looked like, but especially on some of the biggest chances that Germany had and their goals especially. It looked like they were just lost and kind of weren't communicating well. They weren't positioning each other where they needed to be. They weren't calling for players when they were coming in and making runs. And this was no more evident on the first chance that Germany had, which was in the 5th minute, where they scored a goal and was ruled offside because Serge Gnabry got a touch on it after it was Gosens who came in. And I mean, speaking of Gosens, we'll talk about him later, but a fantastic mid-air touch to kind of karate chop the ball into the net, similar to that the Stefan Leiner goal, if you guys remember that from Austria's opening game, a similar play to that. But the reason why that was able to work was because Semedo was really cheating in and playing almost as like a third center back, and he was playing really centrally on that right side still, but very centrally as to where everyone was lining up in that back line. And that just opened up so much space, acres of space on that left side for Gosens to exploit and navigate through, and you saw that happening most of the match. So if we look at this goal, it starts with Müller winning back possession after almost losing it and turning over the ball. And it starts by him spraying the ball out wide, which is something that happened really frequently in this game. Germany was able to pretty much get most of their attacks through the width that they were providing from their two wing backs. Robin Gosens, who we mentioned, Gosens? I need to figure that one out. But him and Joshua Kimmich were the left and right wing backs, and they were providing great width and great service and off-ball movement. They were doing so many things. We'll touch on that a little bit more, but in this occasion, it was actually Matthias Ginter, the right center back, who had pushed up and was able to get in a really good cross for the goal. But if we look at this, or for the almost goal, I should say, if we look at this, the way that Semedo is playing, he's supposed to be marking this player right here in the middle, or theoretically that's what he's supposed to be doing. But if we look, we have Ruben Dias, who's basically all the way far in between these two players here for Germany and not really marking anybody. And so that has Pepe cheating inside, which he's probably going to catch the run of this person, which I think is Kai Havertz. And so Semedo is right behind Serge Gnabry, who is the one who ended up getting the touch for it to be offside. But if you look at this, when the ball is played in, Semedo is so far out back here with so much space left on the other side for Gosens, and I believe that's Bernardo Silva, who's not really tracking back either. So basically you have 15-20 yards of space for Gosens to just run into. And by the time the ball's played in, and you see there's nobody even attacking Gosens to try to defend them, because Semedo is occupied with Gnabry, who's making a darting run into the middle, who's a dangerous player in that position himself. And so you see Gosens just with a free shooting opportunity, and if it wasn't for that touch for Gnabry to be offside, that's an easy goal from Germany. And this is in the 5th minute, so you kind of want to forgive Portugal a little bit for not figuring these things out quite at this time. But as we'll dive into a little bit deeper, these things kept happening throughout the whole match. And it's kind of miraculous that they didn't figure this out prior to giving up 4 goals, essentially. So that all really just leads to the second point that I was going to make, was just the effectiveness of the wing backs in this game. Gosens and Kimmich, I don't think you can really pick one or the other out. I thought Gosens could have been the man of the match. It's honestly blasphemous in my mind that who scored gave it to Ronaldo. I thought, obviously he had a goal and assist and kind of kept Portugal in the match, but I thought throughout the wing backs were the most threatening players on the pitch, especially from an attacking sense. And Gosens becoming the first defender ever to get a goal and 2 assists in a match, in a Euros match, from what I heard on the post-game show, which is incredible. He played a brilliant game. He was doing everything he needed to do on ball and off ball, especially like we just touched on, those off ball movements into space, making things really difficult for Portugal. And Kimmich was no slouch either. Kimmich, I was kind of questioning, as I think a lot of people were, why he wasn't playing centrally. And I think I still have some questions about that, because I don't think Gundogan had a very good game, as we'll look at one of the Portugal's goals later on and see kind of a little bit of a microcosm of why he was playing so poorly today, or why I think he just didn't have a great game overall. But I think you could make an argument to have Joshua Kimmich in that spot in the center of that 3-4-3, one of those 2 defenders in the middle. But he was really effective on the wing as that right wing back, and it's a position he's played for years with Bayern before he just moved into the center of the park this past season, pretty much full time. And I think he's just as effective in either role, but the problem for Germany is that they don't really have a natural option to replace him on that right side, which is kind of why they're forced into playing him there, where they'd probably love to have him centrally. And they also have a lot of really good central midfielder players. So I thought today the way that those 2 players played was incredible, and it's what really helped give Germany this attacking threat where they didn't have it in the game against France. And I'll have to maybe go back and look at the film from that game and see if they were making similar moves, if they're getting into similar positions. I really don't think France was giving them similar spaces to run into, but in this game they really exploited those and made it easy for Germany to create attacking chances and control most of this game. So for everything that Germany did right in this game, they weren't perfect by any means. And I think the biggest thing that they struggled with today, there's kind of 2 of them. One is more a literal thing, and one is more of a mental thing, I think. The more the mental side that I think they struggled with was just cohesion. I think it's kind of maybe the case of, there's been so much talk about Joachim Löw bringing in players like Hummels and Müller, and kind of bringing in some more of the veteran players that haven't played with this younger group of players, and maybe that's just leading to some chemistry issues a little bit and not having great communication between each other, which I think it has manifested itself in some problems throughout the game, and actually kind of throughout the past 2 games, even as we saw in the France game as well. But the bigger problem, I think, for more of a literal sense in this one, was the fact that they were really caught out in transition often. And you can see that that's 100% what Portugal game planned to do. They tried to make life difficult for Germany on the break, on the counter, and almost to the detriment of Portugal at times, because they sat back so low and kept some of their players up so high, as we just touched upon, that it kind of didn't lead to very many opportunities for them. But the ones that they did have were lethal, and more than lethal, they obviously got their goal that way, but it just caused Germany so much trouble luckily enough, they were not able to, or they didn't give up another goal due to that fact. But the second goal that they did give up was kind of also based on just a lack of communication, and Ronaldo was able to get basically a free header and nod it over to Diogo Jota, who ended up getting the second goal for Portugal on a situation that was just completely unnecessary. And it was totally against the run of play. It was from a set piece opportunity that was from 35 yards out. And the way that the game was going at that point, Germany scoring 4 straight goals after Portugal's opener, it just didn't need to happen. And that's something that if Germany really wants to tighten up and progress through this match or through this contest, they're going to have to fix and sort out some of those issues on the defensive side and with their communication, their cohesion, and just being able to be a little bit more active on the counter. So if we look here at the opener for Portugal, there's a couple reasons why this was able to be such an effective counterattack, and a couple things that I think Germany didn't do very well. They could have done better to probably stop this from happening, or at least slow the transition down enough to where that cross from Bernardo Silva doesn't end up getting to Diogo Jota. So if we look at this here, it starts out with obviously a corner kick, and you have Joshua Kimmich and Toni Kroos taking the corner kick. Joshua Kimmich is the short option, and Kroos is taking the kick. But once the corner kick is taken, you see Joshua Kimmich is just on a full dead sprint to get back into the play, and unfortunately, he's not able to get there in time. But the player that's there, who, as you can see here, it's İlkay Gündoğan. And if we stop it here at the midway line, you have Bernardo Silva with the ball. He's carrying the ball past the midway line, and İlkay Gündoğan still has a little bit of room to make up before he gets to him, but he's on the path where he should be able to get there, and he should be able to close Bernardo Silva down before he can do anything, and be able to get off a dangerous cross, which he obviously does. And it's similar to that Danilo Pereira situation earlier in the game, where he's just not getting tight. So as you see him closing down the angle, he kind of cuts him off and then just gives him about 10 yards of space. He doesn't actually get tight to him. And what that allows Bernardo Silva to do is he gets off a clean cross. And as you can see here in the still frame, you have Joshua Kimmich coming into picture, but he's the one that just sprinted 90 yards from a corner kick, so he's not going to be in position to get there. And Joshua Kimmich isn't the fastest player in the world to begin with, so it's kind of asking a lot of him to come all the way back from the corner to now be in position to get to that back post to guard Diogo Jota. And so if you look at another player in this sequence, and that's Kai Havertz, he's sitting here and he's tight with Ronaldo right now at this point. And as the play progresses, as Diogo Jota gets the ball on that left side heading towards the far post, Kai Havertz is nowhere to be seen at this point. He's essentially just left Ronaldo to go straight into the box and have a free scoring opportunity, which is not what you want to do with Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously. And so it's just kind of weird that he leaves him there, and you can see even when Diogo Jota brings the ball down, Havertz kind of makes another run onto it, or kind of motions as if he's going to try to approach Ronaldo, because he kind of sees the opportunity is getting more dangerous. Ronaldo's in a scoring opportunity here, but he just leaves him. He just essentially just lets Ronaldo run in clean. And I think that, it might be a lot to ask out of Kai Havertz to come back and defend Ronaldo on this play, but if he at least keeps a body to him and keeps his positioning a little bit better, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for Ronaldo to essentially not just have an open tap in, which ends up being what happens on this play, and that's how Portugal gets their first goal of the game. So the fourth point that I want to make about this game, the halftime substitution of Bernardo Silva for Renato Sanchez didn't make any sense to me. It really came as a surprise, because I thought they were going to substitute for Renato Sanchez. I thought he was going to come in the game for sure. We saw his dynamism on the ball and be able to progress play and create opportunities in just the 10 or so minutes that he had. in Portugal's opening game against Hungary. And so I thought that was a clear substitution. Portugal didn't have nearly enough of the ball in the first half, only had 38% possession. And so I thought that would be a natural substitution, but I thought he would come out for one of the two defensive midfielders. And it looked like they were in a 4-1-4-1 from what Who Scored had listed. I think that was obviously a lot more fluid as the game went on, but I thought the natural change would bring out William Carvalho and bring in Renato Sanchez and put him up into that two-man midfield right next to Bruno Fernandes and let him just operate and push forward and get on the ball and create more opportunity, have more possession, and just get Portugal into the game a little bit more. And the fact that they brought off Bernardo Silva, I'm recording this like almost right after the game, so I don't know if it was an injury or anything like that. If something like that comes up, I'll make sure to have a note of that in here. But if it was just a substitution, I can't make any sense of it, to be honest with you, because Bernardo Silva was one of the key players that was actually contributing when Portugal was getting out on the break. And they didn't do as much of that in the second half. So if that was the coach's thinking, was to kind of limit those opportunities and try to get on the ball a little bit more, I get that. But I still think that you want Bernardo Silva in the game. I still think that he's one of the players that can get on the ball for you and progress the ball and make things happen. And you didn't really need two defensive midfielders in this game. And maybe I'm not giving enough credit to William Carvalho. Maybe he does get on the ball more often in his games in La Liga. I just didn't see much of that in today's game. And so I thought that was just a really precarious substitution, and I didn't think that was a necessary one to make, when I thought the obvious one to make was to be Renato Sanchez coming off for William Carvalho. And this kind of leads into a bigger point that I wanted to make, is that if Portugal wants to continue with this low block and not have hardly any of the possession, which across these two first games of the tournament, they're about middle of the pack as far as possession goes. I think they're sitting at 54% right now, but that's highly skewed by the fact that they played against Hungary in the first game and had 70% of possession against a team that has the least amount of possession across the whole tournament. And so if they're going to continue with this weird two defensive midfielders, or if you want to call it a 4-1-4-1, whatever they actually end up playing, I just don't think that being so passive is going to work out for them. And the fact that they have to go against France in their next match, I think they're going to get shredded alive if they continue to do this. Whereas, France and Germany aren't going to line up exactly the same. No, France continues to play a four-back and have those three really pivotal midfielders with Conte and Rabiot and Pogba, who are all having a good tournament so far. And so I don't see them having the exact same opportunities as Germany did, but France is obviously more lethal than Germany is, as we could see in that game in the opener of the Euros, in that group between the two teams. And one thing that we've seen consistently out of France throughout this tournament is their ability to create things on the counterattack. So now if you're essentially sitting back and waiting to counter against your opponent, if you're Portugal, and you're playing against a France team who's going to do that, but also who is comfortable in possession with Pogba and with Rabiot and with Griezmann dropping in, and obviously you have Benzema, who does a great job of doing that as well. So they're very comfortable being in possession, and France will not necessarily take the game to you in the way that they're going to be aggressive and they're going to be offensive, but they're going to have plenty of possession, and they're going to make the most of their opportunities with the ball and on the counter. And so I just don't understand why Portugal continues to have this low block, and I just don't think that's giving them any benefits at this point. And so that leads me to the last thing that I want to talk about for this group, and that's just the group as a whole. It's really, really fascinating how this group is shaped out, with the result earlier today having France and Hungary get that 1-1 draw, because now that leads to a couple different scenarios where a few of these teams could actually end up progressing and winning the group, some of them actually. So you have France obviously topping the group with 4 points. You have Germany in second place right now, just above Portugal, both with 3 points, both with one positive goal difference. but with Germany the slight advantage right now, and Hungary at the bottom of the group, but with 1 point, which coming against France in their final match, going to be against Germany, obviously still keeps them in the hunt a little bit. And so now you have a scenario coming into the last match day, if you will, last round of fixtures for this group of death. You'll have France and Portugal squaring off, essentially for whoever wins that will probably end up taking the group, unless that is Portugal, who will end up finishing on 6 points. And you'll have Germany taking on Hungary, which you would think Germany is probably going to win that game as well. So now it puts Germany on 6 points as well. And so now you have them as the top 2 teams, France going through in the 3rd place with 4. But I think the really interesting thing is if Portugal is able to find a way to control France in that game and create some kind of a draw, and then you have Germany, who is going to play against Hungary, and I think, as I just mentioned, probably will get the win there. That puts Germany on top with 6 points, France with 5, and Portugal right behind that with 4, which I think is by far the most interesting scenario if we can have Germany actually winning the group, which I don't think anybody thought was going to happen after the first round against France. So I'm really looking forward to that last round of fixtures, and I'm just ready for the chaos. I'm ready for anything to happen in that situation. I think that honestly anything kind of could happen, because Portugal to me is the biggest wild card in this, where they're going up against France. I don't think they're necessarily going to be, they're not going to be favorites, but I also don't think that they're going to be as close as most people would think, or I should say, I don't think they're going to be close enough on paper to really give France any troubles the way that they're playing now. And so I think that, you know, even though Hungary is probably the weakest team in the group, they just earned a draw against France today, so you can't really count them out to do that again against Germany, and then that really opens up so many possibilities again. So I think this just leads to so many fun scenarios, and it's going to be a fun final day of the match week. Okay, so that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys loved it. If you did, leave a like or a comment, and if you didn't, leave a dislike if you'd like to. I just want to get as much traction on these videos as possible, and hopefully you guys are liking them. And if you are, I would love for you guys to follow us over at 1v1_sports on Instagram and Twitter. And drop us a like, drop us a comment. Let's interact throughout this tournament. I'm really looking forward to the next round of fixtures and moving into the knockout rounds. And I hope you guys are going to be there to join me and watching those games and following the tournament as it progresses. So that's it for today. Thanks guys. We'll catch you later. Peace.